Welcome. Good to see everybody. In my current series, I want to talk about spiritual growth. I really appreciate what Stephen was saying at the communion table. It happens a lot that the things that I'm thinking about speaking on end up being in the thoughts of others who are contributing to the service, and I thank God for that. I think it's amazing. But I want to talk about spiritual growth, and in order to do so, and I started this kind of 2 weeks ago, talking about discipleship, and so Jesus, this buzzed at me when I hit that button. I'm just going to let you hit it because I have you up there. Hit it, Mike. There you go. So Jesus said in the Great Commission, he said, "Go and make what? Go and make disciples." C.S. Lewis. I'm reading this devotional classics book. It has all kinds of people throughout history, and it's talking about spiritual growth. And in there, C.S. Lewis, one of the quotes from his books, he says that the church is really failing in terms of making disciples. We've sort of focused on making converts and not so much disciples. And there shouldn't be a difference, but there sort of is. In making converts, we've approached the world with this message that basically says, here's the deal. Here's how you can not go to hell, right? Or here's how you can get your ticket to heaven, and here's the deal. And so people say, well, I don't want to go to hell, or I want to go to heaven. I'll take that deal, right? And so there you go. Sign on the dotted line, and you're in, right? And then somewhere later on, oh, well, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned it, but there's also this cost of discipleship thing where you have to give up everything, even your own life. And if necessary, you got to hate your mom and dad and everybody you love. What? Sort of a bait and switch going on. Do we like that? Do we like the bait and switch? You contract with somebody, maybe you're going to build a house for $300,000 for $100 million around here or something. 300,000, come on. You're going to build a house for, let's say, I can't say $1 million, I can't. You're going to build a house for $300,000, and before it's done, the contractor gives you the bill, it's $400,000, and hadn't changed anything to the house. How do you like that? Oh, I just thought I'd add to the cost. Do you want to deal with people like that? Is that the kind of contractor you're going to refer to your friends? No. But this is sort of what we've done in Christianity by going out and just focusing on making converts. Kind of giving the impression that here's the deal, bam, sign on the line and you're in, and that's all God was aiming for. But he's looking for disciples. When we were in Luke 14 a couple weeks ago, Jesus was talking about the kingdom. And in the middle of talking about the kingdom, the guy shouted out, "Yay, blessed is the guy who eats the bread of the kingdom of God." And the crazy thing is, the ironic thing is that at the very moment Jesus was talking about the kingdom and offering the bread, and nobody wanted it. See, everybody wants to sit at the table. They don't want to be serving. Everybody wants to be at the head of the table, not at the foot. Everyone wants the highest place, not the lowest. They want the best, finest food, not the crumbs. That's who we are. That's what we want. And so Jesus says to that world, which was kind of the people of God, and also to his own disciples who still wanted to be the greatest, he says, but I'm among you as one who serves. I'm among you washing feet. This is why he goes on to talk about the cost of discipleship. And we have to understand that the cost of discipleship, another thing C.S. Lewis says, is the cost of not discipleship costs way more than the cost of this. We don't get that. We've got to understand this. We're still wanting to sit at the table of the feast of the world. We want to add a little Jesus to our life. It's sort of like hot gluing wings onto a caterpillar. What do you got? A dead caterpillar. Right? That thing ain't going to fly. It doesn't work that way. You don't just add a little Jesus to your life. There's a story about a young man who he wanted to become closer to God. He wanted to feel more spiritual and be more devoted. So he took a piece of paper And he wrote down everything that he would start doing for God. And he wrote down everything he would stop doing on behalf of God. He would stop doing because God would want him to. And he wrote all that stuff down, signed it at the bottom, and he laid it at the altar of his church. And he went home and felt absolutely nothing. Still felt distant, sort of empty. So he thought, okay, and he wrote some more stuff he's going to do. And he wrote some more stuff that he wouldn't do. And he went and put it at the altar of his church. And still felt nothing. Didn't feel changed. And so he went to a wise pastor that he knew, and he said, here's the problem, here's the deal. And the pastor said, well, let me tell you what to do. Take a piece of paper, sign it at the bottom, and lay that at the foot of the altar. Do that. And so the young man did that, and he went home, and he found peace. Why? Because Jesus has to be the one that decides. Either he's Lord or I am. And what happens is we don't want to go to hell, we want to go to heaven, but we're not so sure we want the rest of that stuff. We're not so sure that Jesus truly is the way, the truth, and the life. We kind of think it looks pretty cool to kind of have a lot of that stuff over there. Anybody know who Annette Funicello is? Anybody know who Annette Funicello is? Anybody know who Ariana Grande is? I hear a lot more in this area. Not as much over in these areas. For I don't know how many, 60 years or something, Disney has been pumping out young children who go on to become stars in other things. You remember the beach movies? Right? And her and Frankie Avalon, right? So these Disney stars, grow up and some of them become, kind of stars in singing or acting or something like that. And I know my girls grew up with Disney, all three of them, and maybe some of your kids did, but how many millions of kids are growing up and just thinking, man, if I only had that Disney star's life. If I only had what they have. If I only could be what they have. Just recently, I hear my daughters talking about one of these stars that they grew up with, who has a great singing career after being a Disney star, and how she relapsed and overdosed on heroin and is in the hospital recovering from. What in the world is missing? No, nothing in the world is missing from these lives. Nothing in the world is missing. They got it all. They got an all-you-can-eat buffet pass to the table of this life, of this world. It's all you can eat. So how in the world are they still seeking for something in a needle? How are they trying to fill a void like that? And is this an isolated incident, or has this happened before? It happens too often. It should tell us that whole banquet we're chasing after in the world, where we can have all the fame and the fortune and the fun and the friends and the finest dining and the fastest cars and the farmhouse. Okay, the alliterations don't always work. But you understand what I'm saying? We have this idea that that's it. That's what'll make my life. And over and over and over, the people who have all of that stuff are still empty, and we hear about suicides, or we hear about overdoses, or lives just being crashed and burned. Isn't that true? And so the only way, the cost of discipleship is that we're willing to push away from that table. And trust that Jesus truly is the bread of life, that He truly is the way, the truth, and the life, that He truly has come that we may have life and have it more abundantly. We've got to believe that. We've got to trust in that. And so He says, go and make disciples. Now, when we think about disciples, we think about like students and teachers, and that works, but it doesn't always work. It may not exactly be what we're thinking about students and teachers. How many of us have taken a math class or science or history or something and could care less who the teacher is? I mean, we want the best teacher, of course. But I mean, we're not there trying to know the teacher's like moral life or ethical life or what they do with their free time. Or we don't care about all that. What do we care about? What do I got to know to pass this class? Right? And Eric will give an hour-long lecture and some kid will be like, is this going to be on the test? We did not practice that. But that's how some Christians are. We've been given this idea, this kind of contractual relationship with God. That, tell me what I got. I'll do this, you do that. Okay, I've done it now. I get to go. And anything else, I just want to know, is it going to be on the test? I don't want all the rest of that stuff. It's no good that way. The disciples Jesus called had to leave everything and follow him. And we can't exactly do it the same way today, but we're still called to do it. We're still called to do it. To be willing to push away from that table and recognize that's not where life is. Life is standing with Jesus. We've got to believe it. And that's why he goes on to talk about in Luke 14 about counting the cost. About recognizing that you can't be filling yourself up on that feast, then you won't be hungry for this one. And so we've got to push away from there. There was a member of British Parliament named Charles his name was in my head. It ends with laugh, but it's actually law. Charles Bradlaugh, that's it. It was a funny looking name. But anyway, Charles Bradlaugh. If there's any Bradlaws, I apologize for that. But anyway, this guy was a member of British Parliament. He was a political activist. He was an atheist. And he began the society, the National Society of the National Secular Society, whatever. But anyway, that was his activism, and he was pretty well known. But around the same time, in London, this is 1886, I think, around then. But around the same time, there's another guy, another very well-known guy in the slums across town in London, and this guy, Hugh Price Hughes. He was very successful in bringing the gospel into these slums and raising people out of kind of poverty and broken lives and sin and shame, and everybody knew it, and he was having great success in doing that. And so one day Charles Bradlaugh says, hey, I want to challenge you to a public debate on the validity of the teachings of Christianity. And everybody in London is like, oh, what's going to happen here? I wonder what's going to happen. What will Hugh Price Hughes say about this? So Hughes says, okay, I'm all for it. I'm going to be there, but I got a challenge of my own. Here's my challenge. I'm going to bring 100 men and women who are going to testify publicly that the teachings of Jesus that I've been teaching have raised their lives up, have given them hope, have given them a sense of forgiveness and taken them up out of the life of shame. And I'd like you to do the same. Bring 100 people who will say that your teachings, your atheism, has raised their lives up. But if you can't bring 100, I'll take 50. Just bring 50 who will say that your teachings have raised their lives out of sin and shame. Or if you can't bring 50, I'll take 20. Just bring 20 people who will say, like my 100 will say, that your teachings have brought them up out of shame and sin and given them hope and help. But if you can't bring 20, just bring 10. No, just bring one. Just bring one person who will make that claim. And then London heard about this, and they were all up in arms again about, or just stirred up again about what would happen. What's he going to say? What's he going to do? And the way the story goes, it says that this Charles Bradlaugh, with much discomfiture and chagrin, withdrew his challenge. Now, why is that? Because Jesus really is the way. He is the truth and the life. He is the feast. It's really with Him that the feast is. It looks like it's over there. They say the advertising dollar tries to convince us it's over there. But it's not. And this is why, can I get two clicks actually. This is why in the Great Commission, Jesus says not only go and make disciples, but then do what? One more click. Baptize them. Why? What does that have to do with it? Paul says baptism is like, it's a burial. Through baptism, you're buried with Christ. You're buried into His death so that you can be raised to walk in a new life. What kind of people are normally buried? And I don't mean in mob movies or horror flicks. What kind of people do you bury? Dead people. If you're going to come to Jesus as a disciple, and He says you got to be willing to give up everything, even your own life, baptism is perfect. It's a perfect symbol to say, I am willing to die in order to have that new life. It's like these shoes. These shoes kill my feet. They're the right size, but they're not the right width. And they push my little toe under the other toe, and they make it hurt, and they cause that stupid corn, or I don't know what it is, but it hurts. I hate these shoes. What'd you say? That's a good question. Then why am I wearing them? That would be Jesus' question to us. But I don't, these shoes are horrible. They look kind of nice, but they hurt. And so Jesus comes along and says, hey, here's the gospel. I got a pair of shoes that'll fit you perfectly. So I'm like, yay! Let me add some Jesus to my life. All right. Now I'm all set, right? Is this... What are you laughing at? I got my Jesus shoes on. Is that what he meant? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. What's going to have to happen if I'm going to stop having the pain of these stupid shoes? I got to get rid of these shoes, man. Get out of here. Oh, I hope it didn't scuff the wall. I'm sorry. That's right. And then it's so nice. It's so nice. I got to put these shoes on. That's radical discipleship. What am I giving up? Yeah, it costs everything, but what is the everything it costs? It costs that everything that's driving me to a needle. You understand? It costs everything that this world says I need, but I don't. I need Jesus. And so, I just want to encourage you. I think I'm going to do this from now on when I go to baptize people. I think I'm going to encourage people to take a sheet of paper before you get baptized. Sign your name at the bottom. Take it to the cross. And just leave it there at the cross. I didn't sign my name. I signed mine on the other one. You got to sign your name. That's all there is to it. You know what? I think I want to do that. I want to make sure people understand that when you say yes to Jesus, you're saying no to those old shoes. You're saying no to that other banquet that's really not food at all. You know, when Jesus fed 5,000 in John 6, they kept following, and they got hungry again, and they were hoping for another meal. And they said, hey, Jesus, there was a guy named Moses, and he was pretty cool, and he proved who he was by doing what? What did he do? What did he do in the wilderness? He fed them. He made bread. So they said, hey, Jesus, why don't you give us a sign? Here's one, random, pull this right out of left field. Why don't you make some bread? And what did Jesus say? I am the bread of eternal life. I'm what you need to feed on to truly have life. And they left. That's the problem. That's the problem with Christianity today. If we've just made converts, but we're not making disciples. If people haven't understood that in their baptism, they were recognizing they had to die in order to find the life Jesus gives. And so I want to encourage you today. And you don't have to do it now. You know, we're going to have a song, but you don't have to do it then. But maybe while we're talking and hanging out here, we always do that after church for a while. Come up here, grab a sheet of paper, sign your name at the bottom, grab a piece of tape, and tape it on there. And just let God know, I'm giving you all. In fact, every morning when you wake up this week, why don't you do that? Why don't you grab a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, sign the bottom, and say, here it is. I'm ready, Lord. And see if that doesn't help us on our road to spirituality. Okay? We're going to sing. You can come up and talk about it now. You can make a commitment now. You can come up and sign a paper now if you want. That'd be fine. Whatever your needs are, you're welcome to do that. You can pass cards to the center. Our elder will pick them up on the way up for the shepherd's prayer. So if you have any needs, please let us know one way or another as we stand and sing our song.